Hey everybody! Welcome to Friday the 13th, the series. I'm your producer, Robert.
And I'm your guest, Matt.
And after a complete, spoiler-filled recap of the episode, we are going to discuss the show you either just learned existed or always wondered how it existed. We promise the answers will be few and far between because we're just here to have some goofity fun exploring a show that, despite or possibly even because of its faults, isn't good and isn't so bad it's good, but is still somehow oddly charming. Let's dive in, shall we? That's right. I am joined today by friend of the show and Bon Vivant TV's Matt. Like fellow friend of the show and former guest Jeremiah, Matt actually watched Friday the 13th, the series, as a youngster, but harbors no delusions about it. I, as always, am discovering the series episode by episode and have only watched the first 15. In just a moment, I'll begin narrating the major plot points, ever so gently indicating the episode's foibles and peccadillos as I go. Then we'll get to finally know the guy behind the guy, Matt. Rinse and repeat, and we'll finish with two cool discoveries for you in our trademark pending segment, Curio of the Week. Fun preview, before revealing his, Matt will point out how many review shows just give summaries and or opinions and shirk their duty to provide rigorous academic criticism, and it will get real awkward for a moment. So look forward to that and so much more. Actually, just that. There's no more. And if you aren't already watching Friday the 13th, the series, ironically or otherwise, all the episodes are currently on YouTube and can be watched sin dinero. You can find a link at the Inner Demon Entertainment website. Now, on with the show. Episode 15, Vanity's Mirror. Submitted for your approval, one Sylvia Unger. Middle-aged woman, streetcar flower vendor, and impassioned adherent to the Adrian Balboa fashion line. Enter Mr. Manager, the type of high-powered 80s businessman who purchases a red carnation for his lapel every day in late fall or early winter just to throw his business adversaries off their game. A lesser show might simply have him purchase a bouquet for his significant other, but no, pish-posh. Such quotidian prose is no match for this show's poetry. Now, to deftly unbalance us, the humble viewer, Sylvia refers to him as Sir several times before switching to the no less respectful Mr. Manager, before going on to reveal they perform this dance every day. Mr. Manager, meanwhile, behaves as if this is his first rodeo. Are actors Gail Cherian and James Loxley, a Littlest Hobo alumnus, to receive the credit? No, I'm afraid it's most likely the script, direction, and speed with which they had to produce the show which shall ultimately receive the kudos. For you see, the point of the encounter is that he doesn't think much of her, much less feel an attraction to her, and she does quickly make the encounter awkward. But this all occurs in the most extreme manner, as if he comes to her every day and simply has no memory of it. The scene moves so quickly that before Mr. Manager, whose name I cannot say without picturing Michael Cera calling himself Mr. Manager, can even react to her opening pleasantries, bellicose Sylvia has already switched to calling out his indifference. Understandably perturbed, he attempts a prudent retreat, only to receive more invective as her anger just keeps riding that hockey stick right off the chart. He feels confident enough in the lack of traffic to turn around in the middle of the street and stand there as Sylvia blinds him with reflected light from the mirror of her makeup compact. What light source could possibly be that strong on this dark city street? All part of the mystery. The haunted curio works its dark magic, and he suddenly finds her captivating, prompting a wonderfully endearing little shrug-smile combo when called beautiful. So actress Gail Cherian is already on her third emotional beat of this brief scene. If you aren't already dizzy from all the tonal changes, get ready, because he immediately apologizes for previously finding her ugly. Yeah, this curio is a real double-edged sword. To Gail's credit, her subtle flinch at that line is heartbreaking, but my God, this scene is a roller coaster of hairpin emotional turns. And it's about to get even crazier. He gives her the carnation he just bought, and she once again seems genuinely charmed, despite knowing full well his sudden affection is not but a hollow confection. Her suggestion they go somewheres private might hint at a bawdy scene to come, but I assure you nothing could be further from the truth. So, did her social class just drop one rung with that line? I'm not sure. Once again, Gail's awkward little hunched waddle across the street with Mr. Manager in tow is a wonderful choice and top-drawer physical acting. And the production took the time to set up the camera on a fire escape across the street, allowing for a fresh perspective of Sylvia leading Mr. Manager to his doom. I certainly hope nothing shatters this moment of wonderful filmmaking. Even though she was previously flattered by Mr. Manager professing his adoration, this time, when he tells her he loves her, she's far more focused on all the times she was spurned. In a moment of foreshadowing, she asks if he'll love her until the day he dies. Note that for later. After carefully positioning him, then telling him to remain in place, she releases the safety latch on a fire escape crank, and down drops a ladder that collides with Mr. Manager's cranium so violently, it appears as though it not only killed the character, but the actor to boot. It's such a brutal impact, I was too distracted to even question why the fire escape release is accessible from the street. Sylvia is absolutely delighted by her handiwork. But, despite the Rube Goldbergian delivery of her vengeance, she must feel the coppers will somehow pin it on her, because she races off down the alley and into the previously deserted street where she is struck down by an unfortunate motorist. Again, this insanity all happens so quickly, I didn't notice the first go-round how the brief close-up of the car's headlight reinforces the light internal imagery system of this episode. The Curio is thrown clear of the collision, guess it wasn't wearing its seatbelt, where it will soon be picked up by Helen, this episode's antagonist. If it seems odd a character who clearly has no interest in makeup or her appearance would steal a beauty compact from a crime scene, don't worry about it. Thank God we dissolved to an artfully composed establishing shot of Curious Goods. After the narrative cacophony of that opening, I wouldn't mind if we stayed on this shot for the next 2 minutes, catching our breath. Honestly, it's one of the best establishing shots of Curious Goods so far. I'm not kidding. There's a couple garbage bags and an old crate creating a foreground frame and sense of depth. And we can see the rarely viewed cross street, providing even more depth. The Winchester Mobile is established along the curb. Hey, there's a sale at Fiorno Brothers Hardware. Isn't that lovely? Inside, I can only assume a young Spielberg decided to slum it, as a nearly minute-long scene plays out in a single take, replete with pans, zooms, dolly movement, and some truly exceptional blocking, including actors passing close enough to hand off the shot. All this and foreground elements creating depth and parallax. This production value almost hides a series first, an accounting of exactly how successful our troika has been in recovering cursed objects. 23 to date, which is less than 10% of the objects listed in the sales manifest. This is a tacit admission that we aren't seeing every object recovered. Ryan posits an excellent question for this podcast's Crystal Ball segment when he sarcastically asks Mickey if she wants them to hire more staff to speed up their collection rate. I can almost overlook the fact Mickey appears to be wearing a fez in this scene, but rolling her eyes when Ryan suggests they find Sylvia is not only unmotivated, cutting to a single of her doing it not only required filming the only other shot of this scene, it necessitated a turnaround, meaning they had to shoot in the opposite direction the camera had been looking up until this point, which is typically one of the most time-consuming activities one can perform on set. It's like they wrote a beautiful and haunting line of poetry, then slapped a question mark on the end instead of a period. Unless Canadian high schools are wildly different than their American counterparts, the production apparently decided to film College for High School on what screams university campus. But in a strange instance of two wrongs making a right, it actually kind of hides the fact all the actors we're about to meet are much too old for high school, but seem right at home crossing a college quad. We have Helen, not only returning, but wearing the exact same letter jacket she was sporting in her previous scene, which, now that I think about it, also seems discordant with her character. She might be involved with athletics or some other school activity that could merit such a jacket, but as a socially awkward weirdo, would she demonstrate pride for her school by wearing it? I suppose at the end of the day, we all have to keep warm, and that brings up a tangential issue I want to address now. The trees don't have leaves, the characters are dressed like it's late fall, Sylvia and Mr. Manager were bundled up like it's the dead of winter, and we can see the actors' breath like they're ripping fat bong hits. And yet, a high school prom is going to be a major part of this episode. For those outside the US, proms typically occur in the spring, most often in April or even May. Where in the lower 48 can you see someone's breath in May? Helen, played by Ingrid Veninger, tags along behind her attractive sister Joanne and Joanne's hunky boyfriend Scott. When they gently tease her, we learn Helen is not to be trifled with. It would seem a lifetime of taking other people's guff has left her mean mad. Case in point, fresh off that sibling spat, she passes a pack of half jocks and half dweebs, okay, who promptly, "Is that Scut Farkus?" It is! A Christmas Story's very own Scut Farkus, as portrayed by Zach Ward. Here, he's inhabiting the character Greg Maisie, but forget that. He shall only be referred to as Scut Farkus. And he's still an ass, objectifying Joanne, then calling Helen ugly. First, his comment about Joanne is a little odd, given that we're about to learn he and Scott are friends, or at least friendly. Second, Helen quickly retorts, "You want to come say that to my face?" when he just did. On the dweeb half of the equation is Russell, played by Simon Reynolds. I don't know, maybe he's what passed for a cool guy in the 80s? It's tough to be sure, given that every 80s person could just as easily be a modern Florida person. Before Helen can lay the smackdown on them, Scott intervenes, and in one of those moments that only exists in film and television, Russell claims they didn't mean anything by it. And not because they're afraid of Scott. In fact, he sheepishly informs them that he's only protective of Helen because Joanne is. Strange power dynamic at play here. Russell mockingly apologizes, and Helen shoots him a glance that makes it clear she has an enemies list, and Russell just went to the top. I'll give you credit, Friday. It's fascinating to watch a show in which the mercilessly bullied outcast is the person I'm most afraid of, with or sans demonic power. As a bell rings and Joanne heads inside, Scott doesn't? So this giant building doesn't contain all the classrooms? How big are Canadian high schools? And speaking of Canada, I'm not sure the frame can handle any more denim. Am I seeing his and hers Canadian tuxedos? Better cut away before the film stock overexposes. Back in Curious Goods, we learned that Sylvia died 2 weeks ago, but that still seems like a strangely long amount of time for Helen to have had the compact and not used it. Then again, there's no reason to believe she knows how to use it or that it's even haunted, so I guess that squares. Mickey and Ryan obtained a copy of the newspaper from the day after Sylvia's death, and fortunate for all concerned, the photographer at the scene took a photo with a shroud-covered corpse in the bottom of the foreground, and the other 90% of the frame dedicated to capturing Helen, serendipitously wearing her Lincoln High School jacket, covertly retrieving the compact. Or attempting to be covert, obviously. It's a bit ludicrous Jack requires a magnifying glass to make this out, but his use of one prompts me to ask, do magnifying glasses still exist today? I'm genuinely curious. Despite needing gloves just to be outside, Helen sits on the frozen ground of the high school quad, admiring the compact, when Scut Farkus and company decide to harass her again. In one of those strange emotional twists this show is so fond of, when Helen says she would rather have root canal than go to the prom with him, Scut Farkus actually seems a little hurt as he denigrates her one final time. Apparently that last comment was the straw that broke the camel's back, because Helen screams for him to go to hell, then unleashes the compact on him by way of reflecting a beam of sunlight into his face on this completely overcast fall day. And presto changeo, Scut Farkus wanders back over to pitch woo at her between showering her with compliments. Helen's response? Well, to scream at him to get lost, of course. So did she just mesmerize him on purpose or accident? Really, it could go either way, but I think it was on accident, because after spending an eternity convincing her that he truly loves her, she decides she's going to test that love by murdering him. Like I said, the hairpin turns of these narrative beats are giving me whiplash. Inside the school, Helen parades Scut Farkus around and even kisses him to prove she can get a guy if she wants to, I think? Maybe? I'm a little distracted by her light blue sweater with music note decoration and a couple salsa dancing on the back. It's somehow even more ostentatious than Ryan's hockey sweater from episode 11, Scarecrow. As if I wasn't confused enough already, after kissing him, she wordlessly leads Scut Farkus down the hall. We cut to 2 random girls laughing at her. A school bell rings. Then we cut to Helen and Scut exiting a room and Helen popping in a mint or gum or something as they walk right back the direction they just came from, this time passing Russell and some random guy. At least that's how it reads. This is a high school, and the halls all basically look the same, so either this is a different hall or there was a jump in time during one of the cuts. I honestly have no idea. Originally, I thought maybe there was an implication they snuck into a room to make out, but that really doesn't make sense. So it's probably a jump in space and not time, but to speed things up on set, they filmed the exact same hall in reverse, which makes the final product very confusing to watch. Reminds me of the poor map system in an old Nintendo game like The Goonies 2 or, well, Friday the 13th. When they pass Scott on the stairs, Helen brushes Scott Farkus's hand away so Scott won't think they're together, for you see, she secretly pines for him. This time, the motivation is perfectly clear, but seems completely backward. Shouldn't she use the opportunity to try making Scott jealous? Back outside, it's like the material inside was a dream sequence, as they're not only once again back to their exterior wardrobe, but their old antagonistic relationship has returned full force, with Scott exuding affection and Helen telling him to leave her alone. In a moment of absolute and insane coincidence, Scott calls back to the opening scene when he mentions he'll love Helen until the day he dies. Whoops. This unforced error on the part of young Master Farkus gives Helen an idea most foul. Few shows have really explored the potential of the on-site industrial trash compactors American high schools keep lying around. But not you, Friday. Helen pretends to drop her hanky, yes, her hanky, into this metal monster of waste elimination, prompting Scott to climb in after it. Right up there with the street-level fire escape release, in terms of surreal placement of an otherwise unremarkable object, is a sign next to the compactor's control switch that states, "Warning, machine may start at any time." What? No, honestly, what does that mean? It seems so self-explanatory, but no non-phantasmagoric piece of heavy-duty machinery could possibly be designed that way. So what is happening in this moment? And we know she's going to intentionally throw the switch, so why even imply his death could be the act of random misfortune? Well, if Scott Farkus made you angry enough as a child to fantasize about Ralphie continuing to beat him to death, you pretty much get your wish right here. I hope the revenge fantasy is all you dreamed it would be. How do we know each other?
When I moved out to Los Angeles, I was already friends with the person that you were then rooming with, and I ended up rooming with you after that.
When did you discover horror?
It might have actually been my brother showing me The Shining when I was way too young to be seeing it.
What age roughly would you say that was?
Oh, maybe like 6 or 7.
And did you fall in love immediately, or were you put off by it at first?
I actually really enjoyed it, and I don't remember it scaring me much, which is odd, because I would get scared pretty easily.
Maybe you saw the Ted Turner cut of The Shining, minus 30 minutes of Kubrick, Deadwood.
I remember one of the more formative horror films that I watched was Communion with Christopher Walken. I was maybe like 9 or 10 at the time, and for the next year or so, I was absolutely convinced I was going to be abducted by aliens, despite the fact that I lived in a well-populated suburb.
Yeah, I seem to recall being a little bit freaked out by V.
Another thing was the opening of Michael Jackson's Thriller music video where he turns into the werewolf, and the Incredible Hulk, strangely enough, also really scared me as a kid.
I cotton to both of those. Maybe a little bit obsessed with the Thriller video.
Okay.
I guess a bit of a gateway to horror.
Right, yeah. I had no problem with the zombies. Maybe it's just because they did the choreographed dance that made them less scary to me. I don't know, but the werewolf I could not handle.
When he turns in the freeze frame on the eyes. I don't know if it's less expected now or back then, but either way, I did not see it coming. And yeah, that was the freaky moment of the video, no question.
Yeah.
It's right up there with Dan Aykroyd in the Twilight Zone movie, asking if you want to see something really scary.
Oh, yeah.
I literally just learned last night that Fellini made a horror film. Did you know about that?
No. What is it?
Technically, it's an anthology film.
Now that you mention it, his segment was called Toby Dammit.
I will take your word on that.
I remember it being talked about when I took an Italian cinema class in college.
Here it is. It's 1968's Spirits of the Dead. It's a trio of Edgar Allan Poe adaptations.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Fellini is one of the directors, and then, I don't know these people, Louis Malle, Malle, or Louis.
Louis Malle, I believe he was Married to Candice Bergen?
Really?
I think so.
And then Roger Vadim.
Yes, director of And God Created Woman, if I remember correctly.
The film stars Jane Fonda, Bridget Bardot, and Elaine Delon.
I'm familiar with him as well from the movie Le Samurai, where he plays a hitman. Definitely one of the more popular French actors I'm aware of from back in the day.
Yeah, I need to track this down and check it out at some point.
I really should get around to that myself.
But yeah, it was just casually thrown out on a podcast or something I was listening to, and it just blew my mind. How have I never heard of this?
Right.
When would you say you first became a real aficionado?
I read it when I was like 10, so
You started young with everything, dude.
I think so. I had seen the TV miniseries, the one with Tim Curry, and really liked it. And somehow my parents weren't like, "You are absolutely not reading that." They seemed to be fine with it. Maybe because they didn't actually understand how much more graphic and extreme it was than the TV version.
Yeah, the book goes places.
It really does.
So you had the standard 80s Stephen King gateway experience into horror.
And the thing was that we would occasionally watch some horror movies as a family. I remember actually a favorite, once again, Stephen King, Silver Bullet, based on Cycle of the Werewolf. We really enjoyed it. It's very entertaining, and it doesn't take itself too seriously, so I think that might be part of the reason why I didn't really have a problem with it when I was a kid.
I've not seen that one.
It's definitely worth checking out. It's got a great performance by Gary Busey.
Wow, I think you just answered my next 10 questions. Well, you wouldn't say it's a horror comedy, right?
No, it's more of a horror movie that has comedic elements.
What would you say are some of your favorite horror films?
The Exorcist is not just my favorite horror film, it's just one of my favorite movies of all time.
Fair.
Obviously, The Shining was very formative for me. Of more recent stuff, I think The Witch is an absolute classic.
Yep, Robert Eggers, fantastic.
Once again, not just a great horror movie, but just a great movie, period. And then a lot of your standard type stuff, or your Halloweens. Mainly just the first one. Just recently picked up the 4K edition of the 1966 movie Incubus, starring William Shatner and shot entirely in the language of Esperanto.
Yes, I remember watching it with you because I know you own that on DVD. You now picked up the 4K.
Did indeed, yes. Still love the hell out of that movie, unironically. It plays out like a long-form episode of The Outer Limits because it's, written and directed by the guy who created the show, and great cinematography from Conrad Hall.
How is the transfer to 4K?
Transfer is really good. It looks very crisp, despite the fact that they were working with the last known surviving print. The only downside of it is that it has burnt-in French subtitles. Yeah, because that was the only one that apparently exists anymore.
I was incredibly impressed with it. It was not at all what I was expecting. I think most of my knowledge of it probably came from watching The Roast of William Shatner. So I guess the bar was low, but yeah, it was absolutely fantastic.
It's basically an art movie.
Very much so. You're just giving out curios of the week left and right here. Matt, you're just the gift that keeps on giving. Now, I know you have a special love of vampires. What did you see first, and why do you think that clicked with you so much?
Probably the first vampire movie I would have seen would have been The Lost Boys, maybe?
Logical contender.
But I think it really kicked into high gear when I first read Interview with the Vampire and The Vampire Lestat. Like a lot of people, that really sparked my fascination with that particular subgenre. And then, of course, Bram Stoker's Dracula, the movie with Gary Oldman, that coming out around the same time. I was already primed to be obsessed with that movie because at the time I was completely in love with Winona Ryder and would watch anything that she was in.
Fair.
But the fact that she was in a vampire movie, well...
Chocolate in your peanut butter in your chocolate.
Pretty much.
And just to be clear, you like all vampires, not just Dracula, although you also make it a point to see as many Dracula properties as you can.
Correct. There are lines that I will draw. I will not watch Dracula 3000.
How about Dracula Dead and Loving It?
I've never seen that either. I have no plans to watch Dario Argento's Dracula, despite the fact that I'm an Argento fan and a Dracula fan, but Argento hasn't really been at the top of his game recently, so...
You might be an interesting person to ask, what are your horror music influences? Ghost, right?
Oh, yes, I'm definitely a big fan of Ghost. I was trying to think of stuff that was influential when I was a kid. Black Sabbath. Occasionally, Metallica would have a couple of Lovecraft-themed songs. They even have a werewolf song.
What about Rob Zombie?
I never got totally into Rob Zombie, although I do really like the Hellbilly Deluxe album, and the White Zombie singles that I had heard I also really enjoyed, like Thunder Kiss 65. I was at just the right age when that came out. But it was one of those deals where back in the day when the kids weren't as spoiled as they are now, we didn't have Spotify or what have you, so if you wanted to hear an album, you either borrowed it from a friend or you bought it yourself. And of course, I didn't have money, so it was pretty rare that I got to experience a lot of newer music outside of MTV.
Any obscure Swedish death metal you listen to?
I do have to give a bit of a shout out to Terra Tenebrosa. They're also another band that dresses up in costume. And to be quite honest with you, when I first saw images of Ghost, I expected them to sound like Terra Tenebrosa. Not quite doom metal, but along those lines. And growling vocals instead of actual melodic singing.
Your love of horror even extends into both video games and role-playing games.
I am actually currently running a Call of Cthulhu campaign. It's the Pulp Cthulhu variant, so it's kind of like if you were to throw Indiana Jones into a Lovecraft story.
What video games have you played?
I haven't played the entirety of the Resident Evil series, but I did play the fourth one, which I understand why people consider it a classic. It's pretty great. I've played the Dead Space series.
You currently playing anything right now?
Right now I'm actually playing Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag, so not a horror game, no. I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with horror games because of the fact that you're more involved in it, so it's a lot easier to get scared. And, I get really anxious and have trouble sometimes wanting to go back to it. Especially the games where you can't really fight back and you have to, just hide anytime the monster is in the room. I don't think I could play Alien Isolation.
Yeah, that's actually one I've really wanted to try.
It's supposed to be great, but it just seems like I'd get way too anxious playing it.
So you're that horror fan that actually loves the fact that it still scares you.
Oh, yeah.
Do you enjoy a good jump scare?
Actually, I'm not a big fan of jump scares, which is definitely a problem for someone who likes horror. But the only time that I really kind of am okay with jump scares is when I go to haunted houses. But for some reason in movies, they just kind of piss me off.
Just feel a bit cheap.
What's kind of strange is that I think the best jump scares that I've seen that I can think of are from a couple of Steven Spielberg movies.
Poltergeist?
No, actually going Lost World, and the one that is probably going to sound the strangest, Minority Report.
Jump scare in Minority Report.
You can probably count on one hand the other directors who have a similar knack for cinematic storytelling. And he understood precisely where to put the jump, because in both cases comes right in the middle of dialogue. At that point, you're not expecting it. So in Minority Report, it's a scene fairly early on where Tom Cruise's character is examining the precogs, and he starts talking to whatever technician to say, hey, what's going on? And as he's talking, that's when one of the precogs jumps up and grabs his arm. That really worked for me.
Instead of cueing it with the music and doing a slow push in and basically telling the audience something scary is going to happen, he truly does it at a time that you don't expect, making it all the more impactful.
Exactly.
And what was the Lost World one?
Towards the end, Julianne Moore and I don't remember the actress's name, but she was playing Jeff Goldblum's daughter. They're trapped in a shed or a barn or something like that with some raptors trying to get to them. And they're trying to escape by digging dirt out from underneath one of the doors. And then they're arguing back and forth about which one of them should go first. And as they're right in the middle of that, a raptor just shoves its head right underneath the door and starts roaring at them.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's not an angle in a place we would normally expect a head to shoot through.
Right.
Two deep cuts, but excellent examples. Well, I would be remiss if I moved on without quickly asking any horror comics you would recommend off the top of your head.
Well, I'm a big fan of the Marvel's Tomb of Dracula from the 1970s. It probably reads kind of silly nowadays, but it's very much a homage to old Hammer films, and the artwork is fantastic. Scott Snyder did a comic called Severed that I thought was really good.
You were a fan of Torso, right?
Yes, it was funny because I first read it when I moved to Cleveland, so it was kind of cool to be like, oh, I'm living in the place where all this horrible shit happened.
Did you ever stumble across or actually go looking for any of the locations?
I didn't go looking per se, but I was in the flats every now and then. If I remember correctly, that's where the shanty town was that Elliot Ness ended up having burnt to the ground in an effort to try to stop the murders.
Were you a Morbius guy growing up?
Not really. I did have the first issue of his solo series that came out in like the early 90s, I want to say, but didn't really read a lot of Morbius stuff, no.
When you can have Tomb of Dracula, why read Morbius? Why have hamburger when you can have steak?
Exactly.
If you like the horror genre as much as we do, you can preview the horror comic book Requiem for a Psychopath right now for free at the Inner Demon Entertainment website. Imagine a world in which horror film slashers are real. Then imagine a troubled teen bringing one out of retirement to help him take revenge on his bullies. It was written by me and drawn by friend of the show, Stephen Yu. Again, that's Requiem for a Psychopath on the Inner Demon Entertainment website. And if you dig it, please either review and rate it 5 stars on Amazon, or don't rate and review it at all. Ratings of less than 5 stars send the algorithm into murder mode for some reason. Thanks. I hope you enjoy it. After the commercial break, the episode cleverly resumes with a close-up of twirling ambulance lights to reinforce that leitmotif, before panning over to Helen in a crowd watching Scott's body being retrieved with a wet vac, I presume. That's twice in one episode law enforcement makes zero effort to keep gawkers at bay. The first time it was the scene of an accident, so I'll cut them some slack. But this is an active crime scene, so what the hell? And are the school officials cool letting the student body watch their classmates' remains being retrieved with a paint chipper? No time to ponder all that, because just over Helen's shoulder is an extra who thought his bit of business should be deciding which of his two friends he should follow once they split up, prompting him to vacillate wildly several times between two diametrically opposed directions before opting to retreat into the distance. Solid choice. Pleased as punch, Helen strolls off past Russell, who watches with suspicion as he runs the back of his hand across his nose. Is that supposed to indicate he was crying, or was it just so cold out, actor Simon Reynolds was concerned his nostrils would start running? Hard to say, but it's clear one of our bullies just became a de facto protagonist. In Curious Goods, our intrepid do-gooders discover Helen in a Lincoln High yearbook, and Mickey announces they can visit her because she found Helen in the book. She's not referring to the yearbook. The sales manifest, maybe? No, that's not right either. What book would have Helen's home? Oh, the phone book. That's right, kids. There was a time when almost everyone's name, phone number, and home address was printed in a giant book and distributed to basically every other human being. Seems insane today, but them's the facts. Now, technically, Helen probably still wouldn't have been listed, as children typically weren't. In fact, I recently listened to a podcast or YouTube channel or something in which the hosts pointed out that in the case of a husband and wife, the man's full name was given, but not the wife's. To wit, Mr. and Mrs. Thomas Jensen. I admit, as a youth, I failed to notice that, but find it endlessly fascinating today. In a strange bit of role reversal, Mickey proffers the best plan by far, contacting Helen directly and offering to buy the compact. Granted, it's a skosh odd that Mickey spins this idea like she's coming up with it on the spot and it isn't their go-to strategy. It even comes across like she's going to pretend to be from an antique store, as if she needs a cover story. And while we're here, it's also odd we haven't seen them try to simply purchase back an item before. All that aside, it's still a far more cromulent plan than Jack's proposal that Ryan go raid a local high school, checking lockers and shaking down random students. Then again, it was the 80s. Maybe that kind of thing was perfectly de rigueur. In fairness, Jack's mind is clearly elsewhere because the look on his face when he proposes calling on his old friend Rashid suggests Jack is interested in a lot more than information about the compact. In Helen's living room, guest director Tarantino dollies from random footage on TV to Helen in a plush chair, her legs draped over the arm and her absolutely filthy feet in the foreground, to finally land on a distraught Joanne and Scott on the matching couch. Quick question. Why is the TV positioned where no one can comfortably see it? Second question. Why are her feet filthy? I know she isn't supposed to be a beauty queen, but we're nearing Charles Schultz's pig pen here. Oh, what the hell. Third question. Why is Helen eating 3 full sandwiches plus multiple full-size pickles? She's not overweight. Is it so she can offer one to Scott? No, because she could simply have one sandwich cut into halves. Even if this is meant to be her entire dinner, it's Dagwood levels of sandwich insanity. A knock at the door prompts Helen to rise, and the editor thought it important we see her head into the next room, almost answer the door, then decide to set her sandwich platter on a hall table. After a cutaway to Mickey knocking again, hey, a little aggressive there, Mickey, we're treated to more filler of Helen opening the door from the hall to the foyer. Man, this family is loaded. And they must be religious too, as there's a cross mounted over an archway in the distance that ends up positioned directly over Helen's head, like a knife over young Danny Torrance. Intentional or happenstance? You be the judge. I started asking questions, and now I just can't remit. When Mickey introduces herself as the buyer for an antique store, Helen responds, "We got all the useless old things we need." But Mickey's line specified her as a buyer, not a seller. So why was this exchange written in this very specific way? Why not a quick rewrite on set? It would have taken no time and wouldn't have cost you, whatever. After shooing Mickey away, Helen heads to her room to admire the compact, and she once again seems to either realize what the compact can do and or hatch a plan that should be painfully obvious. You're an odd duck, Friday, in that you often take the time to show a character's inner thought process, but then have them later act as if they're just winging it, and are as surprised as the rest of us. Helen redirects her admiration to a photograph of David Orth. Who is that, you ask? Well, the actor who portrays Scott. The difference being, this carefully composed black and white photo with an enormous white border has to be an actual publicity shot of David Orth. In the 80s, we didn't all have professional-grade high-resolution cameras in our pockets and a wealth of filters at our fingertips. Every photograph was in color, with the subject dead center in the frame, whether or not that made for a pleasing composition, and, with the exception of instant Polaroids, the image went all the way to the edge. So, was Mickey's encounter with Helen another case of one of our heroes actually tipping the antagonist off to the evil power they now possess? I like to think so. Ryan the Lion's just been hanging out at night on the front steps of a high school, as you do. When Jack and Mickey roll up in the Winchester mobile, he informs them a jock died that day. Wow, couldn't have gotten that trenchant insight from a news report. In a strange moment of ambiguity that is a hallmark of this episode, Ryan can't be sure the death wasn't an accident, and Mickey isn't sure if Helen has the compact. This echoes Jack's earlier declaration that they have no information about the haunted curio, which might well be a series first. Strange, given the episode began so grounded in facts and figures about exactly how many haunted antiques have been recovered. Jack then proposes Ryan will have to investigate the high school as if this wasn't something he was already doing. Maybe the implication is that he'll now have to pass himself off as a student? I really don't know. Episode 3, Cupid's Quiver, taught us fraternities decorate for their parties with long dangly party tinsel, whereas this episode teaches us high school proms decorate with Christmas tree garland tinsel. Russell seems as bemused by this discovery as we are, while we dolly with him across the gymnasium for a full 30 seconds before he finally interrogates Helen. Total aside, but if it seems out of character for Helen to be helping set up for a prom she despises, there is actually a solid rationale that will reveal itself later. Russell is entirely concerned with Scott Farkas's humiliation at Helen's hands, but not his murder. Unacknowledged by Helen is the deep insult implied by the idea that simply winning Scott's affection and or showing it off would inherently demean him. Wait, hang on. Was the purpose of that trash compactor sign to justify why no one is acting like a student was murdered the previous day? I mean, I heard all the lines of dialogue calling it an accident, even implying Scott Farkas himself was probably to blame, and good on the production for realizing the script was lacking, but is a Simpsons-esque sign really your rock-solid solution? And now that I'm jumping back through time, I suddenly realize it wasn't the previous day. This is all happening on the same day. This show shoots so much at night, it's like being in a casino, but yes, the dialogue clarifies this is the same day. Does the sun set at 4 p.m.? Are these kids setting up for prom at midnight? What time is it? What month is it? At least hit me with a title card that says Thursday. And you know, murder or accident, Russell, buddy, you've really lost the forest for the trees. Scott Farkus's humiliation should pale in comparison to his, getting squished. Years from now, are people going to remember the few minutes he was seen walking hand in hand with Helen? Or, again, squished? Take the long view, my dude. I beseech you. Backed into a proverbial corner, out comes the compact to reflect a veritable laser beam of light from somewhere into Russell's face. Before she leads him clandestinely away, I would be remiss if I didn't highlight the fact she's dressed as stylishly here as any of her contemporaries. Her hair is a little greasy and she doesn't wear makeup, not even to hide her blemishes, but with the exception of that one sweater, her sartorial game is typically on point. Come to think of it, this episode is called Vanity's Mirror, but there's not one vain character in the episode. Helen is almost comically self-confident and doesn't yearn to be beautiful, nor do any of the attractive characters let it go to their head. As such, I'm not really sure there's a lesson to be learned here or any themes explored, which should eliminate this episode as an example of great storytelling, and yet, on IMDb, it's considered a top-rated episode. Go figure. Quick nod of respect to Ingrid Veninger, the actress playing Helen, as her ironic delivery of the word lover before leading Russell away is absolutely the least sexy, most uncomfortable use of that word in all of recorded history. Yep, Ryan's backpack, headphones, and black and white check shirt that's causing camera aliasing all suggest he's attempting to pass himself off as a high schooler. And again, the ages of every other high school actor actually make this seem vaguely plausible. While jogging down a nearly deserted hall of lockers, he manages to crash backwards into one of only 2 students present, knocking her books out of her hands with only a half-muttered apology as recompense. Hey Ryan, I don't mean to spaz shame, but have you tried not being a spaz? Uh-oh, Helen has led poor Russell past the kind of industrial door one expects to seal off either a meat locker or slaughterhouse kill floor into what's probably the boiler room of this insanely industrial high school. I would say nothing good happens in boiler rooms on this show, but really, nothing good happens in boiler rooms, period. Oh wait, looks like they've passed through the boiler room on their continuing journey through a maze of off-limits areas to finally reach a shop class? There's a conspicuously placed table saw and I think a drill press in the background and an axe on the wall? Maybe this room is dedicated to the study of hotel management, specifically the Overlook. While asking if Russell will love her till the day he dies, Helen awkwardly folds him backward over the table saw, turns it on, then cuts him in 2. Honestly, this episode has more industrial accident death than episode 9, Root of All Evil, with its demonic mulcher. As is his wont, Ryan arrives moments too late to save Russell, and actor John D. LeMay is immediately subjected to the thorough humiliation of having to avoid the reflected light from Helen's compact. Picture a cat chasing the beam of a laser pointer, then picture the opposite. Demeaning for all concerned, right? He attempts to use his book bag as a shield for a half second, but this proves too logical and efficacious, so he reverts to form, running around like a total goofball. The high-intensity light source always hitting the compact has never made sense, but this dark classroom takes the cake. And Helen, you can't run after him while reflecting a beam of light. That's not how light works. I'm simultaneously struck by a dichotomy of wishes. On the one hand, I wish we could see the whole ray of light, as with the lantern in the previous episode, and not just the end product. On the other hand, having just done this exact same thing one episode previous, why on earth didn't they just have the compact work on anyone who looks into its mirror? Then maybe our heroes could have all been wearing cool sunglasses like in They Live for protection, and they could have taken down Helen by wearing mirrored sunglasses that reflected the compact back at her. I'm telling you, this thing writes itself. Well, given how many times she shines it on his face, I think all Ryan actually has to do is close his eyes. But instead, his spastic flailing sends him sailing off a catwalk, through a steam pipe, and apparently onto some buckets of paint. Yeesh. Reminding us all how shockingly good the stunt work is on this show. You're one of my guests who does know the show and who actually watched it as a kid. You and friend of the show, Jeremiah, are in the same boat there. When we were speaking a minute ago, you mentioned that it came on around midnight your time. That would have been in Ohio?
Yes.
Okay, that seemed about the same as what Jeremiah was saying about Missouri. Now, Jeremiah talked a bit about how over time the show became popular enough that they started putting it on earlier and earlier. Was that the case where you were at in Ohio?
If it was, I wasn't aware of it.
Do you know if you got in on the ground floor on season 1?
I definitely started watching during season 1. One of the ones I remember watching was the one with the teacup.
A Cup of Time, episode 4.
I did watch Cupid's Quiver, and it didn't really ring any bells, so I might not have seen it. But I definitely remembered A Cup of Time.
Oh, you can't forget A Cup of Time.
Yeah, it's one of the more ridiculous ones that I can remember.
Yeah, I think so far out of the first 14, probably my least favorite / most favorite.
Okay, yeah.
Most absurd, but least good.
I think that's fair. I did vividly remember the pop song version of I'm a Little Teacup, or Teapot.
Yeah, I did the same thing watching it because the haunted item is a cup. Did kids at your school watch the show and talk about it? Or if not, how did you find it?
I don't remember any of my friends at school or anything talking about it. Boy, how did I find it? I did look at the TV guide a lot, so it's quite possible I saw, oh, there's this show called Friday the 13th. It's on TV, so don't have to try to convince my parents to rent it or something.
Did you watch the show expecting Jason to show up at some point?
I don't think I did, and if I did, I was disabused of that notion pretty quickly.
Yeah, definitely. Had you already seen any of the Friday the 13th movies by that point?
I don't think I had, to be quite honest with you. I don't think I saw those until I was a bit older.
What would you compare Friday the 13th, the series, to, if anything?
Oh, good lord. It's kind of like they were trying to have the best of both worlds. It's not an anthology series, but it kind of is because there's new characters and self-contained storylines every week.
Definitely a Monster of the Week show, but with limited continuity.
Yeah, I can't really say Twilight Zone because Twilight Zone's a lot classier. Maybe a little bit Outer Limits, but even then, Outer Limits tended to be more sci-fi than supernatural.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The only other comparison that I can make is one you've already examined at length, and that's Needful Things.
Being a fan of John and Jeff of System Mastery Expounded Universe and Movie Mastery, did that prompt you to check out any episodes of The Littlest Hobo?
It did not. Yeah, I wasn't sure if it was something that was readily available anywhere.
It is on YouTube for free.
It is on YouTube, okay.
As of the time of this recording.
All that I know about The Littlest Hobo is whatever I heard from their TV Mastery podcast.
I watched the first episode of The Littlest Hobo, and as I've mentioned before, I completely vouch for it as being a weird parallel, not in terms of story or tone, of course, but the production value and seemingly the speed with which they had to make the show, where they were interested in entertaining you, and that comes first, and having any plot point make sense is a distant second.
Okay.
We need to deliver this medicine? How about if this dog parachutes it down to the child? Yeah, that'll work. That's interesting. Does it make any sense? It doesn't have to make sense. You're right. I'm going to do it. I feel like that was the ethos of both of these shows. Is it interesting? That is king.
Right.
Everything else, distant second.
Yes, and then there's, of course, the inherent Canadianness.
Oh, absolutely. Comes up in some of the accents and probably just some of the general outlook on life. Am I too hard on Friday the 13th, the series, Matt?
Oh, I don't think so. Like you said, it's not good, and it's not so bad it's good, but there is definitely something about it that makes it very entertaining despite its problems. I think you're pretty fair.
Some shows have a monster of the week. This series has a curio of the week, and so do we. So Matt, what is your curio of the week?
My curio of the week is a YouTube channel, a film critic named Ryan Hollinger. He concentrates mostly on the horror genre.
You know, I think I've actually come across him.
I think I might have recommended him to you once.
That sounds right.
I really enjoy the way that he analyzes the films, because I notice a lot of YouTube criticism tends to just be summarizing the plot and then making comments here and there, but he actually goes deeper into the actual themes, various subtle things that you don't necessarily notice on a first viewing. It's very insightful stuff. I highly recommend him.
Are there any particular videos that really stand out?
It's going to be kind of an extra curio of the week. He did a video on a movie called Savage Land, a found footage movie that is about a small Texas border town where everyone gets savagely murdered.
The one you recommended to me, I looked into how to find that, and it might be a little while before I see it, but it's definitely on my list.
It's one of the few movies I've seen recently that actually managed to creep me out.
Cool. And you said try to go in knowing as little as possible?
Yeah, I would definitely recommend that.
Should be easy enough. There wasn't a ton of information about it online that I could easily find.
It's not hugely popular as far as I can tell, but I was very pleasantly surprised.
Does he do most of the heavy hitters? Your Texas Chainsaw Massacres, The Thing, The Shining?
He's done some of those. I know he did The Exorcist, but he also touches on some fairly obscure ones as well, which is great because it helps me to find new stuff that I haven't seen yet.
That was kind of the impression I got from the videos of his I watched, so I was just curious. His channel is just his name?
It's just at Ryan Hollinger, last name spelled Hollinger.
My curio of the week is the man, the myth, the legend, Garth Marenghi. The persona you would get if William Shatner was cast in a Rob Reiner mockumentary about Stephen King, an author whose hubris regarding his status as the grandmaster of literary horror truly knows no limits, or knows those limits are beneath him. Descending to a more grounded reality, he's a character portrayed by actor Matthew Holness on the 2004 British horror parody miniseries. Thought all British shows were miniseries. Garth Marenghi's Dark Place. The meta premise of which is that, in the 80s, acclaimed horror scribe Garth Marenghi created a television show about a haunted hospital that pushed the limits of the genre so far no network would air it. Now, in 2004, he's finally getting his chance and is blissfully incognizant of how out of date and low budget it is, let alone that it was never any good. Garth both acts as a host, providing the show's backstory, and plays Dr. Rick Douglas, MD, on the show within the show. Rounding out the cast are Richard Ayoade, Alice Lowe, and Matt Berry. Plus, good old chap Stephen Merchant shows up for 2 episodes. To get the tone of the series, I cite the following quote from Garth. I know writers who use subtext and they're all cowards. Far more recent, Garth's legacy lives on in the 3-book series Terror Tome, as well as the standalone Throttle and Bribes. And if you pick them up, do yourself a favor and purchase them as audiobooks, as read by the maestro himself. If you listen to this podcast and/or enjoy genre parody, seek out his work before his work seeks you. Man, this episode just keeps getting crazier and crazier, and you'd be wise to think they already burned their stunt budget for the episode, but au contraire. Apparently, Canadian stunt coordinators charge by the episode, not the stunt, so we're treated to a sequence that puts the triple Lindy to shame. TV's Matt will join me next time to finally begin discussing the episode. He and I will make wild and unfounded predictions for the future in our signature segment, Crystal Ball. And who knows, there might even be some discussion of our curios because although Matt might be mad north-northwest, when the wind is southerly, he knows a hawk from a handsaw. Join us for all that and more classic Matt Balmos next time in Part 2. Thanks for listening, everyone. We know you have a lot of options when choosing a Friday the 13th series podcast, and we sincerely thank you for choosing ours. Special thanks to Joshua Romeo for original music and to Stephen Yu for original art. And be sure to check out the Joe on Joe podcast, the only podcast where Joe Schlepsky discusses G.I. Joe. If you want to support our show, you can leave a review and rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. If you want an occasional update on our projects, you can sign up for our newsletter at the Inner Demon Entertainment website. And if you want to complain about social media with us on social media, you can find links on our website. And always remember what Carl said to Frylock. It don't matter. None of this matters. Good night, everybody.